Part of the problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How are you, good sir?
I'm still riding high from those Denver shows. That was electric. And now we're off to get some fancy steaks. Some green room steaks from the old Greek man.
Yeah, we're going out to Hilarities in Cleveland, Ohio, which is one of the best comedy clubs. Love that place. And yeah, they have this like excellent steakhouse attached to the comedy club. And just so typically me and Rob are like eating like a quesadilla with like a thing of guacamole that you have to like pull a lid off of that was like bought at the store. But we're going out to have some steaks this weekend. Come on out to Cleveland, comicdavesmith.com for those ticket links. So I wanted to start today's show, or we'll see how long it takes. But I wanted to give some of my thoughts on this this event that I was just at for Turning Point USA. I should say first of all, we were in Denver at Denver Comedy Works all weekend, and I went from there to Florida to do this Turning Point events. Got to at least take a moment to say what a weekend we had out in Denver. I mean, geez, Rob, it's a Comedy Mothership and Denver Comedy Works are the two best comedy clubs I've ever worked in my life. I mean, this weekend was just incredible. If you're out in the Denver area, go check out a show at Comedy Works. Literally every aspect of the weekend was just perfect. Like all the shows were sold out. The room is perfect. The staff was great. Just they really run a club the right way. And we got such a great fan base out there in Denver. Just a excellent weekend. Robbie murdered on every show. It was great.
Yeah, it really gives you a false sense of life. Telling that first joke up there, you just hear it, you're like, oh man, this is what comedy used to feel like. This rules.
Yeah, it was great time. So more relevant to our show and to today's show is the going and doing this Turning Point USA event. And I have some reflections on it. It was, well, first of all, I guess I should just start by saying I should publicly, as I did on Twitter, thank Charlie Kirk for having me. He was really just very, very cool in every way. Like he really pushed for me to be at this event. He was super cool to me the entire time we were there, and I very much appreciated that. Okay. So, and also, again, really, Turning Point is really an incredible organization. Like the staff is great. Everything runs really super professional organization. It's impressive what Charlie Kirk has built there. Okay, now in terms of my biggest takeaway from this from going to this event, which really was very interesting, was, you know how me and you, Rob, had been saying for the last couple episodes, and we were like, this Epstein thing is a real problem for Donald Trump. This isn't just, a little thing that the base isn't happy about. This is like a really profound issue that is going to change the way his base looks at him. That was really solidified by my experience there, or maybe solidified isn't the right way to put it, but it was validated for sure. Like this is Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, and I'm sure as some of you guys saw. In some of the clips that were going super viral, like with Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly, but when they're saying straight up that the government is covering up this child rapist intelligence operation, this blackmail ring, they are getting. I mean, it was like the overwhelming majority was with them. It was really something. And when you come out of an environment like that, like this is the most rah Donald Trump's base that there is, like this is you're at the epicenter of like the pro-Trump crowd. And it was kind of stunning to me to see that they are really not going along with this one, even though Donald Trump straight up told them to. They're just not going along with this. So it seemed to me to be a huge indicator that we're on to something with that. Now, I don't know what exactly comes of that, or what, is it possible that this is kind of the story of the day, and maybe in a little bit of time, it's not quite as white hot of an issue? Perhaps. I got to say, I don't think this one is going away, but it was really interesting to go there and see how much of these like young activist Donald Trump base types were just not having it. That I thought was very interesting.
You know, sometimes live events are very interesting analytic because they're not a poll and you are kind of just going off your personal gauge. But I
Yes.
think we all remember when Donald Trump showed up to UFC, or when entire stadiums were booing Joe Biden,
Yep.
and they had the "Let's Go Brandon" chants. And I've personally had jokes that work really well, and then suddenly they're not working well. And that's because the attitude of the country has kind of changed, or the
Right.
joke that you were telling has
Right.
become obvious, or now it's just kind of gone more sad. Like even like so it's interesting. There is a gauge there of an attitude of a live audience, and
Yeah.
particularly if you're in front of what feels to be the conservative base and they're all on board with one particular topic that the administration does not want to address. It's a pretty firm analytic of, hey, I don't think you're going to be able to just brush this under the rug.
Yeah, it's I will tell you, not just being there, and you're right. Yeah, of course, it's a very good point. I mean, it's not a scientific poll or anything like that, but it's also not. I'm not claiming that I'm not claiming this is a random sample. The whole point is that this is very much not a random sample, that this is a particular group. And if you're even losing them, the implications are something more broad. Now, look, you could make the argument too that like the activist class is more immersed in this stuff. And to the average voter, the price of eggs and gas is still more relevant than this. But I just don't look again. You're talking about in a similar way with the Iran thing, but you're talking about these people like you had Megyn Kelly up there straight up saying that he was Mossad. So Megyn Kelly is a huge right-wing, media figure. Tucker Carlson is the biggest right-wing media figure. And again, then as somebody who's not as big as those guys, then me stepping in there and making the arguments that I'm making. And it was an interesting event. I'll get to my thoughts on the debate more specifically, but it was, I don't think I've ever done a debate in an environment quite like that. I've done debates in front of live audiences, but they've been much more academic, where this is like a rah-rah crowd. And, there's some issues with that. It changes the nature of a debate when you have that. Maybe I'll get into that in a little bit, but it was like I'll be honest, like it was a split. It wasn't like the entire crowd was there for me. There were hardcore Zionists in the crowd, and there were certainly people who didn't like that I was criticizing Donald Trump so harshly in the crowd. But like if you were there, it was the clear majority were with me. Like the applause that I got were twice as big as the applause that Josh got. And that's not saying an indication of who's right or who's wrong. I'm just saying it's interesting right away, just that that is the makeup of a Charlie Kirk event at Turning Point USA. And I do think that, I'm not ascribing any dishonest intentions to Charlie Kirk. I take him he's been nothing but cool to me, and I think I have nothing but good things to say about him. Personally, that is. Obviously we disagree on some issues, but it did feel like, part of the reason why I'm even there to begin with is almost like it's just, you can't deny this. Like when twice as many people here feel this way than that way, you kind of have to give your audience, you have to at least let them have someone who represents their feelings or something close to it. But anyway, this is, just to be clear here, Charlie Kirk is, Mr. Republican, Mr. Donald Trump supporter, the guy who mobilizes his biggest activist, group for young people. And he's like a committed Zionist, has been saying over and over for many years how deeply he feels a connection to Israel. Like this audience, historically, you would think this would be like the most hardcore Zionist audience. And the most hardcore pro-Israel, pro-Trump audience. And even there, it was just obvious that the majority was, listening to what I had to say, and agreeing with what I have to say. Now, it doesn't mean they're not supporting Donald Trump, and I'm not saying they'd pick me over Trump or something silly like that. But it says something about like, it was just already impressive to me how open they were to hearing this argument and even agreeing with it. So that was very interesting. And I wasn't, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And I thought that quite possibly I was going to be debating in like a really hostile environment with the crowd against me. And I was kind of looking forward to the challenge of that. But then what happened was when we were in Denver, and me and you did talk about this, Rob, although we haven't really talked since the debate itself. But when I saw Tucker Carlson up there and the applause he was getting, and like I saw that video where there were some students who were walking out when he was talking or whatever, but then you hear the applause and it's like thunderous, and you're like, oh wait, I don't know how this is going to be like a partial hostile audience with a much larger sympathetic audience or an audience in agreement there. So anyway, it was just that in itself was an interesting,
dynamic. You had a favorable audience. You just had to debate the whatever hammer guy and a host. That's it. So it was just a 2-on-1, but at least the audience mainly had your side.
You know what? I will say I thought Charlie was a fair moderator. And, I did see a lot of people were kind of making that point on Twitter. I think what happened, honestly, was I think Charlie really wanted to keep it like a good faith conversation and a good faith debate. And that was kind of over after Josh's first opening statement. And then it was almost like he was trying to referee me into keeping it a good faith debate, but it's like, well, no, dude, it doesn't work that way. Hey, look, I don't hold anything against Charlie. I think he was trying his best to make it a good exchange of ideas. I will say, I mean, look, I'll give you guys just like a little bit of background.
By the way, with that said, I thought the framing on the questions was slightly biased, but I did like the way that he asked sharp, clarifying questions that gave people an opportunity to either make their argument or showcase the fact that they didn't actually have an argument to make. Yes.
Well, speaking of showcasing the fact that they didn't have an argument to make, Josh look, man, I don't know what to say. He was just ridiculous. And the whole, like, I think he thought because he took a bad loss in the first debate that he had to like be more aggressive or something like that. Let me just give you a little bit of background info, okay? Because this is like, to me, was like kind of fascinating. So literally the only thing, again, very similar to the Douglas Murray thing, and they always trap me into this because I really am just like a naive romantic in my heart of hearts, which is ridiculous. Like I got to grow out of that at some point. But I just like anytime anyone before the debate is like, hey, we just really want to make sure this is like a good faith exchange and doesn't devolve into like name calling, and you guys, I want to have a very respectful, good faith debate. And as soon as anyone ever says that to me, I'm like, neato, awesome. Like I'm just like, oh, okay, sure. Like, let's have a good faith, respectful exchange, and we can actually talk about the issues because this is what matters. All the other stuff is just a distraction. So this is what Charlie says. It puts the three of us in a text message. Josh writes back like emphatically agreeing. Yes, absolutely. Let's keep it good faith and respectful. I chime in. I go, of course, that's great. The 100%. That's what it'll be. Charlie, we get there. All three of us are in the green room together. We sit down. We have a nice conversation. Charlie reasserts that he wants this to be a good faith, respectful debate. I go, absolutely. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go out there. Josh's opening statement to the debate ends with him saying, I'm disgusted that Dave is on this stage with me right now. And I don't know, there is something, just like as a man, that shit fucking baffles me when I see it. Like, it just baffles me. I'm like, dude, you don't just, like, I'm not even saying you can't do that, but I could never do that while having previously just been such a phony. Like, doesn't your skin just want to crawl off your body? Like, I don't know. That's just nuts to me. It's the exact same thing as Douglas Murray. They both like initially go out of their way. It's almost like that's their attempt to like defang me, is to go like, hey, don't come in here being personal. But anyway, so look, I thought that was nuts. But anyway, and I did think Charlie was surprised that he ended up doing that. But so my thoughts overall on the debate are like, I think what I was saying before, when you having a debate in front, like I've done live debates in front of a live audience at like the Soho Forum, and I did one at Princeton University. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I did any others in front of a live audience. I don't know. I definitely 2 at Soho Forum and 1 at Princeton University.
I guess
might
the Cuomo one that was.
Oh yeah. That's right. That was a live audience too. But almost always, I mean, I guess the Cuomo one, the audience was a little bit more riled up, but typically speaking, like in the Soho Forum ones, the one in Princeton University, it's a much more academic setting. So you're just kind of like, you're sitting here and you're discussing your ideas. You're you're presenting your arguments. When it's like a rah crowd, people, and I did this during the debate as well. It's natural. It's like you start playing to like applause lines. And so now everybody does this a little bit in those events, but you still want to be making arguments. Josh's opening was just like, I'm strictly just doing that. I'm strictly just playing this social psychology game of this guy doesn't like Trump and this guy said all types of things about Donald Trump. Now, one of the things I got to say, to take away now, again, the debate went very good for me. The response has been excellent. Charlie Kirk put out a poll and I was dominating in the poll. Last I saw it was like 60-40. I didn't post it or nothing. I just figured leave it there. And there's amongst his base again, which is a very interesting dynamic to me. But one of the things that I think is a big part of the reason why these debates go well for me is every one of them, right? Like my spiel, my take on this and my arguments. And so now obviously we could talk for 3 hours about the argument if we wanted to get into detail. So you have to be condensed in these environments, but it's very, I go through it as I always do in these debates. I start telling the story and I'm like, okay, here's what happened. The neoconservatives hijacked our foreign policy after 9/11. The neoconservatives were joined at the hip with the Likud party and Benjamin Netanyahu. This is not a secret. This is open. You can read it in their own writings. This is who they were. This is what they wanted to do. They had this clean break strategy. Go read the memo yourself. It was written to Benjamin Netanyahu by Dick Cheney's men. Like, this is what, here's another, go read Coping with Crumbling States. It elaborates further on this plan. The Project for a New American Century elaborates further. This is what General Wesley Clark was talking about when he said he went into the Pentagon when the neocons had control of the government and saw they had a plan to overthrow 7 countries. They wanted to overthrow 7 governments. This was the clean break strategy. This was their plan for Israel to overthrow the governments in the region. And whatever, we get into a lot more of the details about it, but this is the argument that I'm presenting. This is all on record. This is what happened. Iran was the last country on the list. That's why they want to go after Iran. And just like in Iraq, when they wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein for completely different reasons, and then they wanted to get the Americans on board, they lied about a nuclear threat. And they're doing the same thing here in Iran, and this is what's going on, and blah, 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 blah. And so I lay out my argument. And as is the case every single time, and then my big closing argument, or what I brought into the middle, was the libertarian economic stuff. That I was like, look, we've spent $20 trillion on empire and war since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And there's no way you can tax people enough to afford that. And we can't even borrow enough. Even though we're $37 trillion in debt, we still can't borrow enough to pay for it. So what do? We print the money, and this is destroying the currency. And this is why you young people here can't afford anything and are just totally, like, your generation is just totally screwed out of, like, I know it's like corny when people use the word, but like, you're screwed out of the American dream. It's such a fucking profound thing to screw your entire generation with, that none of you guys can afford to be owners in the society. You're going to be renters forever. And you're lucky if you'll be able to afford just to rent a good life. You're going to rent with roommates or live back in with your mom, or hope one of you has a parent with some money that they can leave you. Like, this is what it's done. So this is my argument. And as is the case in all of these debates, Rob, the response to this argument is nothing. There's no point in the entire debate that, like, it's a pretty compelling argument I'm laying out here. If you can find holes in it, then fine. And again, I'm giving you a very condensed version here. I can defend this for hours and hours and hours. I just know this stuff. There is no response. Nobody ever responds to the clean break memo or responds to General Wesley Clark or responds to the idea that they lied about the nuclear threat in Iraq and they're doing the same thing here. Like, there is no response to any of these points. It's all just like either debunked like bullshit. But again, the money being inflated because we can't afford this empire. There's no response to it. And so instead, so I lay out like a bunch of this stuff in my opening statement. And then Josh's opening statement is like to pull out, he had a prepared thing to pull out a list of my tweets. Every last one I'll stand by and defend, where I'm criticizing Donald Trump. And then to go, after saying it was going to be a respectful, good faith debate, end by saying, I'm disgusted to be on stage with this guy. Like, there's just something interesting to me, Rob, about the fact that it's like we live in the upside down world. Everything's so goofy and cartoonish. Like, here I am, I'm the shit talking comedian. There sits Josh, the senior editor at Newsweek. And yet I'm the one making arguments, laying out a narrative, like building a case. And he is like, again, like all of them, like he debates like a mean girl. Like, it's just, it's so weird to be in this situation. Like, dude, I'm supposed to be, and then there are, and like, you're the suit and tie guy. You're the guy with a real job as a journalist and a writer and an author. And yet you're the one who, it's the lowest debate tactic to bring out tweets from a completely other issues than what we're debating, just to say, this guy don't like Trump and we're on team Trump. And by the way, much like with Ben Shapiro, I didn't know this till after the debate because who the hell cares about Josh Hammer? But much like with Ben Shapiro, he was a DeSantis supporter. He's not, now he comes and plays this, I'm loyal to Donald Trump and you're not. You were trying to support anybody else except him. So anyway, I just like, I don't know. I think, look, dude, I'll give you the fucking secret, because all of them are grappling with how the fuck to deal with me so much. It's just like, this isn't going to work. You got to, if you're going to send, whoever the next guy you're going to send has to take on that argument. And if it's wrong, then demonstrate where it's wrong. But I don't think they can, because I think it's right. And, then anyway, I guess just the other thought that I wanted, that I thought was interesting, right? Because so when you're doing this, you're playing like a social psychology game, and social psychology is always a part of anything where there's groups of people, and particularly in politics, and it's true in debates, and particularly in live debates. And we all kind of do that. You present things in a way that you think will, allow the audience to be moved by it. And so that's the game Josh is playing there. And then it was just like really interesting moment in the debate was my initial response to his opening, where he goes through this whole thing, because you got now, as he's reading off all of the tweets, and he's reading off my tweets from over the years, where I'm like, Donald Trump should be in prison for the rest of his life. This guy's a war criminal. This guy's like, I'm really going harsh at him. And you could see it's getting up. It's drawing boos. Like, I'm getting booed as he's reading my tweets in the audience, right? But then it goes back to me, and I go, so that's your opening statement, that I've been critical of a guy who just covered up a giant child rapist ring? Yeah, I think we should criticize that. And that got way more applause in the room than the tweets got boos. And it was just an interesting read of the room, of the dynamic, like in a way, with the social psychology of it. This Epstein thing, like, allowed me, it's so unpopular what Trump's doing with it right now, that it gave me cover in a way that, like, when he should have, if he was being smart, not included the one about the Epstein thing and just read my tweets about the wars, because I do think that like the social psychology of that wouldn't have worked as well for me, even though I still think I'm right, but it was just so interesting to me that that's like, yeah, that's how much of a fuck up this Epstein cover up is that I could come to Turning Points USA and call Trump a war criminal who should be locked in jail for the rest of his life. And even all I got to do is throw that Epstein thing at him. And they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, that is, you really ought to use harsh language about something that awful. And so anyway, I just, I guess those are really my takeaways from it. But it was, yeah, it was an interesting experience, and I was quite happy with how it went. The other thing people said to me, because I made that crack up top about going on no sleep, which I really was going on.
I happen to know it. People don't quite know what the comedy travel looks like, and how much you give of yourself when you're performing to packed houses of your audience, and waking up at 4 a.m. after doing a club weekend of shows. I mean, I texted you that day. I couldn't believe I was sitting on my couch, dead exhausted. I was doing 20 minutes. You were doing a full hour. I think you did more podcasting on those days. So yeah. I could not believe that after that weekend, you had another work day and that it came with a 4 a.m. wake up.
Yeah, well, that's, I didn't I slept for like an hour and a half in the hotel room. Then I slept a little bit on the flight, but that sleep was never good sleep. But, people were saying like, oh, how do you do this? But the truth is, Rob, and I think you'll kind of know this too, it's fine. It doesn't really affect the debate. Once the debate starts and you're in the middle of a live show and everything's there, you get into the moment. It's fine. It's just the whole rest of the day that really sucks. So like, it still sucks today. I'm like still not caught up yet. But so it's not like doing the debate itself is fine. It's just the getting there and all that is a pain in the ass. So like that wasn't like a whole big thing or anything. But any thoughts you have on any of this, Rob?
Yeah, firstly, it was a fun watch, and I thought it was another. Well, it's not another head for the mantle because you had already defeated him. But yeah. I thought one of the prime weasel tricks that he was pulling was when he brought up a specific criticism of what he was laying out, he would go, well, I don't know about that example, which was even like the shooting of people at Palestinian food sites, just going, well, I can't speak about that example. And well, that example it debunks everything that you're saying.
It's a pretty big one.
Yeah, if you guys want to say that it's only an issue when they're human shields, how do you explain this one? And then there's other examples you didn't mention, but what about when Israel says that here's a safe corridor and then it bombs it? Or what about the stories of Israeli soldiers using Palestinians to Palestinian kids on to get rid of booby traps or whatever? I mean, that one, I don't know that that's validated, but
no, you're absolutely right. I was harping on that one maybe because it's just recent and it's in the news, but also because the Israeli government admitted it. They had, because with so many of them, they fucking deny it. But this one, they admitted that it was Israel. But you're absolutely right. I just think the human shields argument is like so far past being even kind of believable.
Well, the other way to say it is if you want to go human shields,
destroyed.
If you want to say in situations of human shields, does that mean when it's not a human shield, it is a problem? You admit that it's a problem. Right. And then in that case, all right, I don't know how many civilians do you think were killed in Gaza? Let's say we go with half the estimate. So it's 25,000 people. How many of those 25,000 do you think were in a situation where they're human shields? So are you saying that the other 12,000 civilians shouldn't have been killed? There's no way to get around it. Between the AI software that's killing people and, just go with the example of being told, hey, here's a safe passageway and being bombed. There's no human shields there.
Dude, go to antiwar.com. and just scroll back over the past 2 years. It's just nothing but every single day, dude. There's literally like right now, hold on. Antiwar.com. Why is it not pre-filling when I go here every day? Hold on one second. Sorry. Is there what's going on? Why is antiwar.com not coming up? Is the site down?
Natalie's got it. Look at the screen.
Oh, do you? Oh, sorry. So I have to look at my other screen. Sorry. There you go. I don't know. My internet must be working there. Yeah. Just okay. Here's the top stories right here. Israel kills 88 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. Another Gaza Freedom sets sail to defy Israel's blockade. Okay. 89 killed in that's in Syria. Oh, that's what's going on in the Al-Qaeda runs Syria. But this, and if you just go back, like if you just go through the last few years, there's just constantly story after story after story of civilians being fucking killed by the IDF. And not in a thing of like, oh my God, this crazy example where like there's a command center underneath a school or something like that. There may have been a few instances where they have some evidence that there was some of that, but 80% of the houses in Gaza have been destroyed. It's like, what's the claim here? Is your claim that all of Gaza is Hamas? Every single family in Gaza is a Hamas, because that's the only way this would even be plausible. So anyway, I'm sorry, Rob. So continue with that.
Well, I just thought that there were that example stands out. But I just thought that there were a bunch of arguments that you had made that he didn't want to contend with. Obviously, at the top of it, the overarching theme of we're spending money for no results and getting people killed. He didn't touch that at any point in time. He didn't want to touch the fact that, you know, innocent civilians are being killed in Gaza. Just didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to touch really Netanyahu's strategy of empowering Hamas. I you know, I should have rewatched it because I watched it while I was traveling, but it seemed like there were more than one times where he just said, I can't speak to that specific example, or just didn't want to take on your argument at all.
Well, it was, yeah, there were things. I mean, there was the one, so it's again, because we debated before. So last time we debated, he goes, this, you know, this, again, it's just like these people, half of them either don't know what the fuck they're talking about or they're just lying or whatever. But he goes like, last time we debated, he goes, Sharon, you know, he goes, well, Dave says Netanyahu advocated for the war, but Netanyahu wasn't even in power in 2002. And it's like, yeah, but that's completely irrelevant anyway, because he's the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history, and he's come back into power several times since then. And so they're saying he's one of the guys who was advocating for this. And he testified as a regional expert before Congress, lobbying us to get into this and 2 other wars. And but he goes, and Sharon was in power and he opposed the war in Iraq. And I go, no, that's not true. What happened is Sharon's envoy, who, when he first found out that George W. Bush wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein, he said, no, you got to overthrow the Iranian government first, and then we'll overthrow Saddam Hussein. Because if you overthrow Saddam Hussein first, Iran is going to have more control of the region, which, you know, is what ended up happening. But then they convinced him that, no, we're going to overthrow Iran next. So don't you worry about that. You got no problem with Iran having control in the region because we're going to overthrow them next. Now, there is whatever in this whole area. It's, you know, Scott Horton breaks down masterfully. There's a lot to it. But essentially, the neocons and the Likudniks, Sharon was in the Likud party and then left at one point, but they had a split between Sharon and Netanyahu. But the Netanyahu guys and the neocons, they had the 7 countries in 5 years strategy. And they did, I think at the time, believe they were going to be able to do it. There's tremendous hubris amongst the neoconservatives. If you go back and really read their stuff the way I have, that's one of the things that really shines through. The group was called Project for the New American Century. That was their plan. We are laying out a plan to dominate the next century. There's just tremendous hubris. And at the time, they thought we were going to be able to do this. They thought they weren't banking on Iraq and Afghanistan both turning into nightmares that would turn the American people off from war. They were still like 9/11 wind at our back. We're the big bad USA. There is no Soviet Union. We can do all this. So they essentially, the Sharon people had the right instinct. His envoy had the right instinct to go, oh, this will give power over to Iran, still had the same plan that we should overthrow both of the governments. And then they were convinced by the dummies who thought it would all work out better if we did Iraq first and then Iran. But then they got on board and then they started. Anyway, so last time he brings this up in the debate and then I give that response. He has nothing to say back to it. There was no response because I'm right. And I know this. And he either knows I'm right or he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And so he doesn't have anything to say back to it. So like he makes the point. I go, nope, you got that all wrong. Here's how it really went down. He has no response. Again in this debate, he brings it up. And I go, as I already told you, that's not right. Here's the real story. Again, no response. Like he doesn't even have a thing to say back as to why I'm wrong. He he just, I mean, he did it over and over. He was the first time we debated, he just got wrecked. This time he was just much more bad faith and aggressive and still just had nothing. He does not have a counter to that point. And so, because it's just a joke. It's a joke to say Israel opposed the war in Iraq. Like everybody knows this is so ridiculous. But again, it's
And then
just kind of desperate.
I also thought there were some real holes in the Iran story that they're trying to showcase. That was one of the moments, is basically him going, "Hey, this was the greatest achievement of
Yeah.
the president ever. 14 days. You thought it was going to be a disaster, and he got it done in 14 days." And one of his pitches, which he really, I felt, misrepresented, where he goes, "They were enriching the uranium, but not to weapons grade. They seem to have stopped at 60%, and they weren't doing it when they were in the IAE deal. So they like to present it that they went up to 60%, and there's no other reason other than achieving weapons. And what they like to overlook is that perhaps it was a negotiation tactic to then go back down and get back into a nuclear enrichment deal. And they also seem to overlook their desire to have a civilian nuclear program, or just to have their own country.
Yeah, I should have hit him on that. I think I did let that point go, but again, it's just, it's amazing.
You can't possibly catch everything when you're there, but just to speak to, they're so convinced that this storyline is just over, and it might be over. But essentially, at the moment, Iran seems to still have its enriched uranium. They seem to have more incentive now than ever. So Donald Trump has declared that it's over, which might be because he's working off bad intelligence and someone told him that they don't have the enriched uranium. It might be that he's calling Israel's bluff and he wants to take this off the table so that he doesn't have to hear about it anymore. But
Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys think are the odds right now on the betting markets that within a year or 2 years or 3 years, we're not going to hear about Iran and their nuclear bomb again? Who thinks that this was actually a permanent solution that we'll never hear about it again?
Or who thinks Israel won't be bombing them more? Who thinks there won't be some reason why there's more conflict? Look, again, who knows? Like you said, maybe this is the end of it. But at the same time, we all kind of, or at least people my age, kind of remember a mission accomplished banner being hoisted up. It's real easy to celebrate these things when you're in the middle of it and just go, yes, complete domination, total success. And you, by the way, because I am old enough to remember this stuff, when George W. Bush was hoisting that mission accomplished banner and he landed the fighter plane and did that whole thing, every George W. Bush supporter, who at the time he was very popular, every George W. Bush supporter was shoving it in the faces of the people who opposed the war. Look at this. So look how easy it was. Look how great this is. Oh, and you were against this. The world is a safer place. Saddam Hussein is out of power. Blah, 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 blah. And it became the biggest catastrophe of the century. So, it's just like, yes, it's ridiculous to be celebrating this, but I should have made the point. And I did think, like, in my head, in these things, you always got to pick what things to respond to and what not to. But I did think, like he said, it's just like, have you ever read one book on economics? Have you ever, do you know anything when you go, it doesn't make sense for them to have a civilian nuclear program because they're an oil-rich country? It's like, what? So you think there's a fixed amount of energy that then it stops making sense for a country to produce more? Do you really need an economics 101 lesson for someone to explain to you how it would make sense to export your oil and use your nuclear energy for a domestic program? That, it's just like the more nuclear energy you create, the more oil you can sell on the world market and profit from. And then you sell that oil for money. And with money, you can buy other goods and services that you don't produce as much. Really? If this is a point? It's just, again, it's so bizarre from my perspective, because the only thing they seem to have to hit me with is like Dave's just a comedian. He's not an expert. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, I know. And this is still such basic shit to me that I can fucking dismantle it in 5 seconds. Did you honestly just stand up in a professional debate and say, why do they need to produce more energy when they already got energy? It's just so nuts. It really is man, fucking sometimes these Warhawk conservatives, it's like they've never fucking read one Thomas Sowell book or something like that, and ever thought about what does economics even mean? Anyway, it's really kind of wild. It's just there's so much other wild shit going on that was the least of the wild claims. So it just, that one got lost. But yeah, I couldn't even believe he said that. And then of course, he had this just total again, I do look, winning over the crowd obviously doesn't prove that you're right. And so I'm not saying that it does, but I am making the claim that I think these arguments are so laughably weak that is why the crowd just sees through it. I do think that's the reason why the crowd is won over. And I mean, I have some, like, from being a comedian, I have some chops and like how to, speak publicly and stuff like that. But it's not like I'm the smartest guy in the world or the most eloquent guy in the world or anything like that. It's just like, that is just not an argument, man.
And then
yeah,
just
go ahead.
Two other things that stood out is, one, never explains why Israel is such an important ally. It's just asserted, which I think just the audience kind of, that's some of the bullshit. It's just like, can you explain to me why? If it's so obvious and so important, can you just give me a common sense reason why this is worth the cost? And,
right, like, why can't you just, then why is it you should just, if it's so common sense and so obvious, then you should just be able to dominate making this case, and I'll have nothing to be able to respond to it that's compelling. Yeah, absolutely.
And then also just the fact that he just folded on the Israel lobby completely.
That was the one I was about to say. Yeah. So this is what I was leading toward this when I was saying that the people just see through this stuff. But so his argument was, like, he does this thing where he starts with a straw man and then knocks down his straw man, I guess. He goes, well, if the Israel lobby is all powerful and all controlling and controls everything our government did, then how come Obama got the JCPOA through when they were against it? And it's like, well, first of all, I never said they were all controlling or ran the entire government. I'm saying they have a lot of influence. And you pointing to one loss that they took, it's like, yeah, you're right. They didn't get that. They only got the war in Iraq and Libya and Syria and the striking of Iran. And they've only got the unconditional support of every single U.S. president over the last 60 years. Like, what? Dude, every president, with the exception of Donald Trump, every president of my lifetime has wanted a two-state solution. None of them have been able to get it. And all of them have continued funding that not happening. So, like, yeah, like, AIPAC does have a little bit of influence. And people should read John Mearsheimer's book about that. It's phenomenal. Just a devastating case. But anyway, so that was totally ridiculous. And then again, I made my point about them donating to woke Democrats. How the hell can any of you support them?
That was great.
No response from them. Just no one's got an answer to this stuff. And people see that. People see that I'm presenting these arguments that no one's got an answer to it. That's like, it's just, you kind of can't, I don't know, you can't fool them with that. And then, of course, in probably what was his lowest moment of the debate, Josh did the Ted Cruz thing and resorts, which I will say is, look, I guess it is, it's an advantage in a sense. It certainly changes the dynamic being like a Jewish guy who's criticizing this whole thing, kind of like being a black conservative or something like that. But it's not to say that you can't be a self-hating Jew, as they claim, or you couldn't be an anti-black racist black person. But when you're not being that at all, you know what I'm saying? When it's like, there's nothing I'm saying here is bigoted. It's just not. Like, I never once am saying anything about the Jews. I'm talking about fucking people with power and what they did and how this whole system works. And then you just turn around and you go, oh, so you're saying, like, for one Jewish guy to look at another Jewish guy and go, so you're saying the Jews control everything, when that's just so obviously not what they're saying, is just so pathetic. And I probably, I called him out for it, but I probably could have gone harder at him. I really should have hit him for being a fucking woke leftist at that point. But like, it really is insane that was really the moment. And there is something, I don't know. There's this moment that's like, it's revealing it to someone's like true kind of character, where it's like when something's not going good for you and you're getting pressed, and then it's like, oh, that's what you got. You just pull out an accusation, racist. Like, I don't know, dude. It's just totally, but I don't know. Look, I'll just say, honestly, I just thought Josh was totally, just all of it. It was totally like dishonorable Just the way he did that, just like zero integrity. It's like, that's it. After all this agreeing to, we're going to have a respectful, good faith conversation, you're just going to resort to, I'm disgusted that he's even here, he's racist, as you're getting your ass kicked on the issues. Like, I don't know, dude, pretty lame. But anyway, I didn't, the truth is, I initially said no to the debate when Charlie Kirk asked. Well, he asked me to debate Tim Kennedy, and I was like, sure, let's do that. Like, I don't know, that seems, someone I haven't debated before, seems like an interesting one. And he'd have an interesting perspective as a guy who served. It'd be interesting in the I forget, Iraq or Afghanistan, but so it'd be an interesting thing to kind of like, a kind of different debate than I've done before. And then he was like, Tim can't do it for his like scheduling issues or something. And then he was like, well, how about Josh Hammer? And I went, well, no, that doesn't really make sense, because like, I already debated this guy at Princeton University. I already smoked him. So like, what's in it for me kind of to just go debate him again, But then Charlie said, he goes, yeah, dude, but this time it's going to be at Turning Point's biggest event of the year. Like, this is going to get much more eyeballs on it and a very specific group. And then when he said that, I was like, yeah, you know what? I really do. Like, that is a really important group to talk to. You know what I mean? To talk to like the young, like Trump supporters, and to try to explain them like, hey, look, man, like if you want to do America first, then you got to do it like this. Like, this is the whole game. And so anyway, that's why I went to do it. It really had nothing to do with Josh. It was to go have these moments and let these kids hear this argument, which, some of them are familiar with, but some of them haven't heard it. And some of them haven't heard it in a compelling way when it's standing up to pushback and not really receiving anything too good. So that was kind of the goal of doing the whole thing. And I was quite happy with how it went. And it was just a very cool, I met a bunch of people who were there. Like, I kind of, I went back to the hotel, but I was staying at the hotel that was like next door to the event. So I just like ran into a bunch of people at the hotel. I had a bunch of great conversations with like smart, interesting people. And I was really, really just pleased with how, how receptive they were to this message. I mean, it just shows you how quickly things are changing in a pretty drastic way.
So I got to ask, backstage, you run into any of the other big wigs? Was Steve Bannon still around? Was Tucker still around?
I saw Rob Schneider, and we hung out a bunch. Great guy. Could not have been a cooler guy. Really enjoyed. So me and him hung out and talked for a little while. I briefly saw Roger Stone at the hotel, and we talked for a little bit. And
you had him on the podcast once years ago. I remember that.
Yeah, I had him one, maybe even twice, I think. But we had him on back when he was, when he was looking like he was going to be in a lot of trouble. But so I did tell him that I was very happy that he was a freer man since last I spoke to him, and he seemed to appreciate that. But yes, I talked to him briefly, and then did meet anybody?
How did I got a nerdy question for you. While you're racking your brain about who else you ran into.
I don't think I ran into anyone else. I think everybody else, it was the last event of the whole thing. And, we were out doing shows in Denver, so I couldn't do it on the Friday or Saturday night. So I had to come in for the Sunday. So I think most everybody, I texted Tucker, like I was like, oh, dude, are you going to stick around and be in town on Sunday? And he's like, I will be on a plane 30 minutes after I'm done with this event.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. Yeah.
I wish I could live that life. Just because flying home at night while you're still hammered is so much easier than waking up when you're hungover. So
that is true.
I would take flying home at night every time if I could. I don't know if you got into this with Schneider, but I've done a fair amount of reading, and I find Mises not to be the easiest of reads, or to be the first person that you would even find. I'm curious how Mr. Schneider even found Mises and how he got through it. I don't know if he got into that with him. Yeah,
I did not. We talked a little bit about him. He said his like the crazy gender ideology stuff being pushed on kids and them labeling the parents as domestic terrorists had a huge role in like waking him up, and the COVID stuff had a huge role. But I didn't really get into the Mises stuff. But I did. We had a whole conversation about how like the connection between the economics and the foreign policy, and how that's what it all comes down to, right? Is that like you have to you have to destroy your own currency in order to maintain this world empire. And then these are all the problems that come with that. And so, like I don't know. I mean, I think he's been, I think, very open-minded about it. I think he's Jewish and pro-Israel, but he's been very open-minded to be like, yeah, okay, there is a real argument over here to what these guys are saying. Anyway, so there was, was there anyone else? No, but I then just met a lot of the people who work there, like a lot of the staffers, and then just a lot of the activists and stuff like that. And some really interesting, really smart people. And there were several people I met. Again, this is, as you said before, this is what would we call it? Anecdotal information. But there were several people I met who were like, yo, like, either I came in today not agreeing with you, or I came in this year not agreeing with you. And after seeing just like so much of your stuff, like, yeah, I gotta say you're right about this, and so like there's just no question that like people, particularly, and all the polling backs this up, but particularly the young people in America are just totally being moved in this direction, being against these wars, being against the support of Israel, being against what Israel's doing to Gaza, and really against us funding it. And we kind of, our side, we always lose the power struggle. Like we always, that's never changed. Like the machinery of government keeps moving, and all of the people who get into government keep being corrupted, or they were corrupt the whole time, or whatever. But in terms of like the argument with the people, it's just the cat's out of the bag and we're winning. And not even little by little, but it's always just going in our direction. It's always more people coming over here. You're not hearing about people who are like, I was a hardcore anti-war guy, and then I just realized that, well, actually, I saw a debate and I realized it's great what Israel's doing in Gaza. That's just not happening. And but tons of people are coming the other direction. And I really do just think it's just the lack of control on the media environment. The lack of control. It's like you got all these guys, you got whoever, just think from the weekend there, you got like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and me and some other people who are making this argument. And then you got the guys on the other side of it, and they're just getting their fucking ass kicked, man, because their argument's just terrible. It's like, what can they even do? Like, they just can't even pretend anymore. It reminds me of that that story in the Soviet Union of the Pope visiting. And people do really credit that as being one of the factors that helped bring down the Soviet Union, started really sowing like a lack of trust. And it's just that the Pope came, and, the communists are all like, we've conquered religion, and basically we are the religion now. And they're like against Christianity. And then the Pope comes, and there's hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. There might've been millions. It was like insane how many people were out. And then you just start looking around, you're like, oh, there's not a consensus that you were saying there is. Like, you're lying. And it's like their thing relies on lying and just pretending that's the consensus, is this lie. But now you just can't pretend that anymore. It's just, and
everyone's been vaccinated except for the crazy kooks living in their basement that don't care about grandma.
Yeah. Right. Until you see that. But it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. Like, and in our day and age, you don't even have to see it on the street. You see a tweet with 200,000 likes next to it, and you're like, yo, wow, there's a lot of people who agree with
video
this.
of a dead kid.
Yeah, well, that's right too. And then you see these type of debates. You see these moments where, like, when the ideas clash, like one side just can't really keep up. Again, it's like, as I get, so someone said, one of these guys, of course, always someone with like a, with like a Israeli flag in their profile picture or whatever. Then they said on Twitter, they go, I just want to see one of these debates where Dave doesn't bring up the same old tired line of 4-star General Wesley Clark said this. And then I didn't even have to respond to it, because all of my fans online, they're all just like, hey, name a time someone's responded to it. Name a time someone's refuted this. Like, that's right. I bring it up every single time. Every single time we talk about this, I bring up the fact that a 4-star general told us he had seen the plans to overthrow 7 governments in 5 years. Seems like a pretty relevant detail. which, by the way, totally is in line with the clean break strategy. It's like, and then we went and did it. Like, so yeah, I think that's a very relevant detail. And with all of the debates that I've done, every time I've brought it up, name the time anyone even had a response. Like, Douglas Murray said something about Wolfowitz starts with a animal and ends Jewish. That was his response. What was Josh Hammer's response? Go back through the tape, see if you can find it. Just didn't address it. Just moved on. And it's, I do just think there's almost like look, if you want to say that there's something wrong with my meta narrative here, if you want to say there's a flaw in it, or you think that's not correct, like, okay. But when I have a narrative here, which is a pretty powerful one, and like, this is the way even the professional, this is how historians work, right? Like, you go into the archives, you get firsthand documents, you look over, declassified information, there's oral history, you get people's like who were there telling stories or whatever. And you look at the facts, and then you kind of construct a narrative around it. And I'm saying, like, I'm giving you this meta narrative here, which is that these people took control of American foreign policy, which is undeniably true. Like, this is just like David Wormser was Dick Cheney's Mideast foreign policy advisor, and they, you know what I'm saying? Like, this Richard Pearl was the deputy defense secretary. Like, all these people went into these positions of power, right? You have Dick Cheney as the vice president, who's really a very influential vice president. You have Donald Rumsfeld, who was the defense secretary. It was these guys, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. They were signatories of the Project for a New American Century. Like, these were the guys. They laid out what their vision was. Then they got into power. Then they proceeded to enact this. And in the middle, a 4-star general is telling you he's seen the plans and we're going to go down. Like, okay, I've got this narrative here. It's a really compelling narrative. Even if you don't agree with it, it's a really compelling narrative backed up by a lot of facts. And you kind of can't get away from someone presenting that in the opening of a debate and then you just turning and talking about other things. And like, never at any point in time going, here's what this whole narrative's wrong. Here's what Dave's missing, right? Okay, yes, they wrote this and yes, they did this, but then there's this other piece of it. There's this other thing. Not even trying, not even making an attempt. Every single one of these debates, by the way, this is how I've won. It's just the fact that I lay out this meta narrative and then they just talk about other stuff. Like, you can't really win. If I was on the other side of this, I would understand, again, not because I'm some super genius, just because this is fairly obvious. I'd understand, I got to take apart that narrative. I got, like, when they present a narrative, I realize I got to take I do that all the time. When he goes, he starts, doing his narrative about how, like, the Beirut bombing.
Islam's the biggest threat, and you say, no, it's the spending.
Right. Or he says the Beirut bombing, this and that, and this is why Iran has been at war with America all this time. I go, hey, what was the name of that scandal? Iran-Contra? Oh, yeah. Ronald Reagan was selling the Iran weapons a couple years later. So, you know what I'm saying? You right away, you put a big thing in their narrative. Your narrative doesn't work anymore, dude. If that was a justification for war, then our president's selling them weapons a couple years later. Come on. This just doesn't make any sense. But so what they always do, right, is I have this meta narrative that I believe is correct. And I mean, I really believe is correct. I know a lot about this. This is like one of my major, issues. And so my major issue. So I have this narrative, and then I go, in this narrative, right, is that Iran was the crown jewel. This was the 7th country on the list of 7 that that 4-star general Wesley Clark laid out, and that all the neoconservatives admitted in their own writing. And I go, so this is part of this bigger plan to topple all of these governments for Israel. And then you just want to move right to they're enriching at 60% or something. You're like, yo, but dude, you haven't talked about, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't actually respond to this whole thing. You're just diving into the latest, like, no, the war propaganda here is right. And he doesn't even have an argument for that. And what was amazing too about, it's like these guys in this old system, and I suppose there are some people like this in the new system as well, but they don't really seem to be the ones who rise to the top. And it's like there was all these things where, like, almost so many of the key points that he had, I just had like a devastating counter to, and then that's it. He's got nothing back. Like I said, with the Sharon supporting the war in Iraq, like he says the lie, I correct it, I debunk it, and he's got nothing else to say. You know, he said the thing about how all the roadside bombs were made by Iran. And I go, no, they weren't. This has been debunked. They found out these were right here in Iraq, made by Shiites in Iraq. And then his response doesn't have a response. He doesn't have a next that, no, that's not true. That hasn't been debunked, or your thing has been debunked. And here's where it was debunked. Here's the journalist who did it. He doesn't have anything like that. Like, it's just, that's it. They got their talking point. I really do get the impression that someone told him, hey, here's a talking point. Sharon's envoy was against the war in Iraq. And that's what he knows about it. And then that was the impression I got, that that's what he knew. And then when I told him back that was wrong, it was like I was just telling him something he had never heard before, and he just doesn't know. So he didn't have the balls to like tell me I'm wrong, because he doesn't know if I'm right or wrong. And I'm right. I'm right. I've read shit that he hasn't read, and he's just unaware of. That's the impression I got. And anyway, the thing that was, I guess, just like really encouraging to me about this was, as I said at the beginning, to just go in to be taking, I'm the guy who's calling for Donald Trump to be impeached and removed and even to be prosecuted. And, and I'm going into Turning Point USA. I'm just, like this is an environment that they should hate my guts. And yet that's not how it's going at all. So anyway, I was really encouraged by that and just really had a great time. And as I said, I am thoroughly exhausted, but I got another day before I got to jump on an airplane. Right. Oh my God.
I'm looking forward to that. And can I plug some porches?
Yeah, of course, dude. Do that.
Natalie, you mind pulling that up? I just sharing my screen here, but reading off the next few porches, and you can go to porchstore.com because there's like 30 left to go. I got Doylestown, PA, Brewston Mills, Virginia, West Virginia, Johnston, PA, White Bear Lake, Minnesota, Memphis, Tennessee, Bon Aqua, Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Baldwin, Missouri, Pekin, Indiana, outside Cincinnati, Ohio, Wadsworth, Ohio, Philly, PA, and then the Smokeout Belgout in Myersville, Maryland, along with the stand-up show and a concert for my friends, the Shedcast Boys. So a lot of porching, and even more after that. There's a run in Arizona. There's a run in California. I'm porching all over the place. Go to porchstore.com and get your Porch Store tickets. Don't ever say Robbie ain't grinding. That's for sure. Yeah, go check those out, guys. And then, of course, comicdavesmith.com for all our gigs together. All right. Catch you guys next time. Peace.